Okay, so what happens when you take one of the world's most serious publications and put its own editors to the test on its 180-year history? Well, we're about to find out right here in this explainer.
We're going to dive into what went down when the Economist's own top brass got quizzed on the magazine's, well, its quirky side. And as you'll see, it turns out even the people in charge can be totally stumped by what's hiding in their own archives.
And get this, the editor-in-chief herself kind of set the perfect stage for what turned into this, humbling but absolutely hilarious challenge. With that incredibly honest admission, the trivia battle was on.
All right, round one. First up, we're diving into the paper's surprising cameos in pop culture. We're talking everything from, highbrow TV ads to one of the most iconic cartoons ever. So the first question involves a huge historical figure, a big-time fan of the paper, none other than Henry Kissinger. He was actually in a TV ad for the magazine back in '96, but the real question is, what was his one and only line?
And there it is. Just a simple, super witty punchline. The whole idea was that, if you read The Economist, you're so interesting that even a world-famous diplomat would be curious about you. I mean, that is some seriously clever marketing right there.
Okay, next up, another pop culture icon. The Simpsons. Homer Simpson was actually spotted reading the magazine, so they asked the editors to guess the headline on the cover he was holding. And their guess was, well, it was a very, very Economist-sounding guess.
They were so confident about this one, and honestly, it sounds spot on, doesn't it? Indonesia at a crossroads. It's got that perfect mix of, global politics and super serious analysis. But did they nail it?
Ooh, so close. The actual cover was Indonesia's gambit. It's a tiny difference, right? But it was enough to cost them the point. And just like that, we had our first big surprise of the quiz. Brutal.
All right, so moving on to round two. This one's all about one of the magazine's most famous and, honestly, most beloved sections, the obituaries.
Now, this question was a real test of their deep knowledge because it involved a really unique and maybe even a little controversial editorial choice. See, the obituaries are for people, except for this one time. So what non-human thing was so important it got its own final send-off?
You can just feel the mix of tension and fun in the room with that quote, can't you? The editors were clearly racking their brains, totally squirming, which just shows how much they were getting into this whole unexpected challenge.
And the answer was the Mars Rover. Yep, a celebrated robot explorer. After all those years of service on another planet, the Economist figured the Mars Rover had earned its place in history, right up there with presidents and popes. How cool is that?
Okay, on to round three. This was a quick-fire round, a real deep dive into the archives, and it was all about historical record breakers.
So here's the question, and it's not just about, how many pages were in the magazine. It's really a clue to a specific moment in economic history that was so huge, it literally made the paper physically bigger.
The answer? The year 2000. And one of the editors got this one instantly, immediately making the connection between that year and the, let's say, booming economic climate that caused this record-breaking issue.
And yeah, that's what's so cool about this fact. It ties the physical size of the magazine right to a massive global economic event. All that tech advertising and financial frenzy during the dot-com bubble literally swelled the pages of the magazine to its thickest point ever.
All right, for the final trivia question, we are going way, way back in the time machine, all the way back to the 19th century to find the youngest person to ever be editor-in-chief.
And the answer is just 30 years old. 30. I mean, can you imagine? That is a wild amount of responsibility for someone that young, especially when you think about what the world was like back then. His name was Richard Holt Button, and he was appointed way back in 1857. And my favorite part is that one of the current editors joked that the portrait of this 30-year-old makes him look more like he's 65. I guess times are tough.
So there you have it. We've watched the experts get totally stumped by their own history. But what's the big takeaway from all this? What's the point of this trivia challenge? Well, let's do a quick recap of the 5 amazing facts we just learned, right along with the editors. You've got Kissinger's punchline, Homer's actual headline, the Mars Rover obit, that huge issue in 2000, and a 30-year-old editor. These are the little details that really bring a long and fascinating history to life.
But that brings up a bigger question, right? I mean, beyond just being fun trivia, why do these little quirky details about an institution's past even matter?
I think the real lesson here is that behind the super serious, authoritative voice of any big institution, there's always a history that's just full of fun and humanity and these really memorable quirks. These are the stories that actually give it a personality.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought to chew on. What this whole thing shows is that even the most, buttoned-up organizations have a playful side. So it makes you wonder, what surprising stories are hiding in the history of the brands and companies that you trust every single day?